So we are joined by youth expert and author Tony Parks. Tony, let's talk about the Manchester United players that have been and are on loan this season. Who are the players that have been excelling and who are the players that maybe we want back at Old Trafford could be in the first team?
I think to answer the first question, in terms of excelling, the one that comes to mind immediately who did excel was Jesse Lingard. He went out to Birmingham City, and I'm sure everybody saw the video, either on YouTube or on the football show highlights, where he scored 4 goals on his debut, each one of them a very, very good goal. And I think what that showed me anyway was that you've got a lad here who has come through the system, has been very, very patient, has been given a chance to go on loan, where I think the loan system worked incredibly well for Jesse. And I think he proved his capability of mixing it with lads clearly more physically imposing than himself. He did really well on pre-season. And I think Moyes has realised that he's got a role to play, which is why during the January window he didn't go out on loan with all the other lads. He's being kept at the club. I would be absolutely aghast if he didn't get some first-team action over the next few months.
Now, his debut was obviously brilliant. Was his form consistent? Did he live up to the hype of his first match?
I think it's always difficult once you've scored 4 goals on debut to sort of, manage expectations. But from who I spoke to on the Birmingham youth guys, who I spoke to, who I know down in the Midlands, including people who are in the management team down there, not personally, but through other means, they were incredibly happy with all of his input in his short couple of months at the club, and they were very keen to keep him there, although obviously Moyes wanted him back at the end of the agreement. So he's one that was definitely a hit. I think the other one who has been significant in making impressions is Nick Powell at Wigan. He's scored a number of goals. He's to such an extent that there's been a lot of talk both on Twitter, on some of the internet forums, where people have said, look, let's get this lad back and let's get him into the first team here at United, because he could be a player who can add some value when there's been some criticisms of our midfield and our front players. So
he's bagged some goals in the Europa League, isn't he? We might need him next year.
Absolutely. And I think, again, that's a really good decision to put him out on loan. I think he's proven his value at Wigan. I think he'll come back a better player. The ones that are harder to assess are the ones that have gone abroad. So we had David Petrucci, who went out to Royal Antwerp. My understanding, talking to a few guys out there, was that he started off really well, had a bit of an impact, and then he fell away a little bit. I really feel sorry for Davide Petrucci. He's had a terrible run with injuries. He's clearly got talent, but at 22, he really needed to make the first-team breakthrough, perhaps a couple of seasons ago, and he's come back. He's now with our under-21s, and unfortunately, I think it's a waiting game for his contract to expire, and then he'll be released from the club. I can see him getting a run in the first team, and I think for his sake, I hope the club does get him another loan somewhere, if that's possible, between now and the end of the season. My gut instinct says that probably won't happen, and he'll be released, which is very unfortunate. So, in terms of loans, sort of a middle of the ground, really. And then the other couple of players who is very hard to assess is Bebe, who's obviously out on loan, Marnik Vermeil, who's out on loan, and Angelo Henriquez, who's out on loan. But because they're at foreign clubs, very difficult to get any anecdotal feedback about how well they're doing.
In your opinion, how good is Henriquez? Like, if Hernandez was to leave, do you think he's a player who could step up?
God, what a question. I haven't seen enough of him to make that comment. I really don't know. He's only played a handful of under-21 games for us, and he was obviously adapting to the English game. He's clearly got pace. He's got an eye for goal. So he's got some qualities that you'd expect in a forward. Whether or not he can match it in the Manchester United first team, that's a huge question mark. And I think we're not really going to be able to tell until he comes back from his season-long loan and we see him at the beginning of the next season. From there, I think, it's very hard to assess the other players. Will Keane didn't seem to do much at Wigan. He was obviously returning from a long-term injury, so it's probably unfair. Ryan Tunnicliffe did okay at Ipswich. That Mick McCarthy was very keen to keep him.
Do you think he was sold because he did well, or was it more of a case of he did well at that level and they thought, well, he's never going to make the grade here? Why do you think it was he was sold?
I think because Fulham came in with a bid. They wanted a couple of United players. This was an opportunity for the club to cash in on a youth player who, as you say, clearly wasn't going to make it at our place. And there was some funds coming in the transfer kitty. I think it was as simple as that. Whereas if we'd kept him at Ipswich, we'd then just got to go through the whole routine of finding another club for him, or his agent had, perhaps at the end of his contract, whether that be the end of this season or next. So I think it was just an opportunistic moment where Rene Muller's team wanted Larnell Cole, wanted Ryan Tunnicliffe, and it suited everybody concerned, apart from probably Ipswich Town, who they were keen to keep him in their midfield.
So what do you think a player needs on loan to thrive?
I think they need probably three things. I think they need a club that will integrate them very quickly. They probably need regular game time. I mean, I felt sorry for someone like Federico Makeda when he's gone on loan and he's just sat on like when he was at QPR last season, he just sat on their bench. I mean, that's no good to anybody. He's not going to learn anything. It's very demotivating. So they need game time, and also they need to go to a club that will actually let them play football. One of the great things about Larnell Cole was that Birmingham played through the midfield, not over the midfield, which meant that Larnell Cole saw a lot of, Jesse Lingard saw a lot of the ball. We hear stories of lads who go on loan and the game passes them by and they look very, very average players, which clearly isn't the case, but the club hasn't suited them. So I think if you get the right manager, the right way of playing football and regular match time, then I think it's usually a successful time for the players.
Okay, so before we finish, let's go back to Jesse Lingard. Where would you see him playing in the first team? You mentioned you'd be shocked if he wasn't featured at all for the rest of the season.
I think he can play a number of roles. I think he can play out wide and bring value to the team. I think he could play deeper in a Mata type of role, where if you've anybody seen him play for the Revs, he kind of plays in the under-21s in that role, just behind the key striker. He sort of roams from left to right. He picks up the ball and likes to run at defences. I'm comfortable that he could play behind that striker role. He's definitely not a striker. He hasn't got the physicality for that, but he's got an eye for goal. So, unfortunately, I would say we've got a lot of players who can play in that classic 10 role. Kagawa, Mata, Powell, even Rooney drops deep behind Van Persie when he plays there. But I would, as I say, I think he's going to get some game time, whether it's out wide as cover or whether it's 10, 15, 20 minutes towards the end of games to give these other players, a rest for Champions League football. I'm not sure, but I think he's going to get some game time.
Excellent. Tony, thank you very much. We'll catch up again soon.
Cheers.